Hey guys, welcome back to We Watch Movie. I am Mike and our Saw reviews continue. This is Saw 5. Now, we're at the point in the movies where I've not seen some of these before. This was, I believe, a first time watch for me, and the movie starts out and you've got the pendulum blade kill that happens. And this looks like one of those Viking ships that I used to cry on as a child and scream for them to stop. Because my parents promised me it wouldn't be scary, and they're fucking liars. But this thing swings back and forth, and he's got this piece of shit guy who's a murderer, and he's like, you take the hands that you use to touch yourself to inappropriate video to hurt people with, and you put them in these things that are going to squish them, and if you do that enough and they ruin your hands enough, I'll stop the blade. Well, he does it, and the blade keeps a coming, and the blade, as it goes through, is knocking out like just chunks of intestines, you know, as it goes through, and it gets grosser and grosser, and you're like, oh my god, will you please just die already? Just fucking die, Craig. And he does. But it's another one of those traps where we're like, whoa, he got out of it, and then someone's just watching through a peephole, and it's like, oh, okay, someone's not following Jigsaw's rules again. I guess he's gonna write a fucking haiku about it. Murder is distasteful. So is everything else you do, fuckface. We go back to the end of the last movie where we see Detective FBI agent, Strom, get caught in a saw trap. Because again, nobody ever listens when Jigsaw's like, I promise you, don't fucking go in there. And they're like, I'm going in there. He winds up in the stupidest looking trap of the franchise, I think. It's just this empty cube, and it's like, oh, I got my head stuck in here. It's like, how'd you do that, dumbass? It's like one of the characters from Prometheus when they're just like looking inside the alien egg, and of course a giant snake pops out and eats their face. I know it wasn't up to him, so it's different. It just looks silly when he's like, oh, I've got a fucking cube on my head. It's weird. It starts just filling with water. And it's like, oh, you're going to drown. A fucking Lego head. You're going to drown and you're going to die, and that's how it's going to end for you. But he, in a stroke of genius, finds a pin in his pocket. I'm like, oh, he's going to try to break the glass. No, says I. He rips the tip off of it and shoves it into his fucking trachea, and then opens up the pin cap, and then he can breathe. So he's just standing there with his own bic in his fucking neck, and they don't show how long he waits, but I imagine it was pretty fucking awkward. There's a lot of like, all right, let me retrace my steps of how I got here. While you're sitting in a tank full of water with a hole in your neck, just standing there with a cube on your head like a fucking idiot. Detective Hoffman rescues the little girl. As we found out in the last movie, he's the new Jigsaw. He's taken over. So he rescues the little girl. He thinks everybody's dead. And they're like, we got one survivor. And dude comes out like Dewey in Scream 9. And he's like, oh, he's still alive. So Hoffman gets like an award, and everybody's just like licking his butt. He stopped the Jigsaw killer. He saved the girl. But dude with the hole in his trachea, who I figured out who he reminds me of. Strom kind of reminds me of like a mix between David Duchovny from X-Files and Jason Lee from like Dogma and shit. But now he has a hole in his trachea, and he's talking like this. He's like, you're not the one with a goddamn hole in your neck. And they're like, yeah, well, you're right. But he suspects, for obvious reasons, since he was there. And it's one of those things, if I didn't fart and you didn't fart, but we both smell a fart, someone farted. So he basically confronts Hoffman as like, I know it was you, you fucking asshole. Sorry, it's like, sorry, I can't, what was that? It was you. Shit. Like, sorry, come again. He decides to go back to the warehouse and piece together the steps to prove that it was Hoffman. And it's that stuff is all terrible because it's so fucking Blue's Clues. Like, it's really obvious. Like, oh, there's a bloody knife on the table. He signed it. I've got him. Like, it was just like they didn't put much thought into how he cracked the code on this one at all. So you basically have the Saw Hunger Games that are going on in this tunnel. And it's this group of people, and they all had something to do with an abandoned housing complex burning down to build a new one, and 8 people died. And they all had something to do with it. And they go through a series of traps. And the whole idea is, it's very simple from the get-go. Jigsaw's basically like, hey, if you want to survive, work together. And they're like, we should kill each other. It's like the most dumbest shit ever. Like, nobody even has a brain in this scene. But they go through a series of traps. There's one that's a net guillotine, and basically they're tied to these ropes, and they've got to get the key to unlock the ropes. When they do, they pull everybody else back, and there's only so much time. So one guy dies, or one lady dies doing that, which is one of the more interesting people so far in the movie. She dies immediately, and it just yanks her back into these 2 corner blades, and she just gets decapitated real quick. And it's just like, oh, well, all right. Move on to the next trap, and there's this dude who Looks like Jackie Earle Haley fucked fat Steven Seagal. And then you got VR Trooper's version of Matthew Perry, who's this just cracked out dude who gets honestly way better at acting and before your very eyes. Because when the movie starts, he's like, "What do you want from us?" And it's some of the worst acting I've ever seen in my life. He gets way better. Finally, what looks like Jennifer Tilly's really hot sister. And they're all in this situation together. And in every one of these traps, they end up fucking each other over again. Of course, by the end of it, they're like, "Oh, we needed this much blood in this giant vat," where they put their arms in and the thing just fillets them until a beaker fills up with enough blood and opens the door. But now there's only 2 of them, so they got to give like a shit ton of blood, because the whole point was you're supposed to work together and survive so that everybody's there at the end. Obvious shit. Could have seen it coming. And that part was pretty cool, because they had to put their hands in this thing that just fillets their arms. And she's like, "We made it." And the dude pulls his arm out and he's like, "Yeah, we fucking did." That trap was cool, but some of them were just super uninspired. Like there's one where there's literally like keys in jars hanging above the ceiling, and he like breaks them to get the keys out. I mean, some basic level like kindergarten classroom escape room type shit. One that was kind of cool was the electric shock one, where they have to spread the electric shock out. So they just make this one lady lay across the tub while they connect them all to her. So she's just like fucking getting electrocuted all angles so the door will open. That was pretty gnarly. And then it's the Detective Hoffman Lost episode. And what I mean by that is like, if you guys used to watch Lost, they would take entire episodes on each character's backstory just to fill up time. They kind of do that with Detective Hoffman, kind of showing how he's been there all along. And I guess it's sort of clever, but not really. All they're really doing is just going, like, remember this point when the dude with the barbed wire? Hoffman was hiding behind the wall. And they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. He's been there the whole time." And the whole idea here is basically that Hoffman's sister was murdered by a guy, so he staged a Jigsaw kill so that he could kill him, but it looked like it was Jigsaw. But Jigsaw, because he knows everything, he's Jesus fucking Christ at this point, sees all and knows all, knew that this happened, found him and was like, "I know what you did, but your work is inferior, and if you don't help me and become my new apprentice, I'll just turn you in." And Hoffman's just like, "Okay, also you're my dad now." He walks him through the ropes of how he does all of his kills and sets all this stuff up and teaches him everything. And it's just really corny. It goes back to the Amanda thing. Like Jigsaw seemed really neat and interesting until he just became just like your fucking average ass cult leader. He's like, "I want you to give me every drop of your juices." He didn't say that, but you know what I mean. Kind of the same thing with Hoffman here. He like is showing him how to do stuff, and they just make him too powerful, and it's weird. They've gotten worse and worse about this as the series has gone on. I mean, he knows everything that's happened. He knows everything that the cops don't know. He knows this and that. Like he was an architect, and like what he does with the traps and stuff makes total sense. But now he's like, "When you're a master at knowing what humans will do at all points, it's easy." Basically, he has Steven Seagal's ego at this point. And it's like, dude, Jigsaw's not a fucking mentalist. Like, why is he a master of the human psyche all of a sudden? It doesn't make any sense. So ultimately, everybody converges back at the same old dusty-ass, crusty warehouse that we've spent 5 movies at. And it ends with Strahm fist-fighting Hoffman. And what was a pretty cool scene, actually, he fist-fights him and he throws him into this clear casket. And he's like, "I got you now, you son of a bitch." Hoffman starts laughing, and that was the whole plan. That was his trap or whatever. So this thin clear casket just Houdini's the fuck out of the room like it's on a slip and slide. And all of a sudden, the walls start closing in on Strahm, Indiana Jones style. And Hoffman's just sitting there in this clear casket, like laughing and smirking, while Strahm is literally squished to death. And you see the arms snap and everything, and literally squished to death like a fucking peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And the blood's like fucking flopping on top of the casket. And Hoffman's just like, "Shit, I can't even watch this. This is fucked up." But overall, Saw 5 just feels like an expansion pack. It feels like no more important to the Saw franchise than Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. felt to the Marvel universe. It's just filling in plot holes as you go along, and they just throw some extra Saw shit in there to make you feel like you're watching what's supposed to be the theatrical version of the movie, but it really feels like a TV show that was meant to just kind of fill in some holes. But at the day, very apropos, I'm going to give Saw 5 a 5 out of 10. Right down the middle, they continue to go down. I hear Saw 6 is pretty fucking fresh and fun and good to watch, so I'm very excited. I hear fans of the Saw franchise really, really love that one. I've never taken part. I look forward to taking part. I look forward to touching parts. Your parts. What? See you guys soon. Halloween never ends, suck my fucking dick, and I don't really care what Blumhouse fucking says. Put him in a box, or suck a fucking cock. You can say he's dead, but we all know he's not, yeah. So let's go trick-or-treating, let's go fucking drinking. Let's all go rent Pumpkinhead on VHS. Cause Halloween never ends, Halloween never ends, Halloween never ends, yeah.